In this video, we'll be looking at how to use the Logger Pro data analysis software to analyze the motion of an object using a pre-recorded video. So first thing I got to do is I got to load my video. I'm going to go up to Insert and pick Movie. And from there, I'm going to pick the one that I want to analyze. So we'll let that load up here. This is our good friend, the red buggy. This is not the slow motion version, because the slow motion version you'll find as we go along would take us very, very long to do video analysis on. So this is the normal speed. All right, so a couple things I need to do to get this video analyzed is I'm going to start by clicking this little button here, which says Enable Video Analysis. That needs to be on. We are not actually going to need this timer. Logger Pro uses the timer of the video itself, which poses a little bit of a problem because, maybe I don't want to use that first frame as my 0 instant in time. So let's say I wanted later in the video, maybe, I was doing video analysis of me dropping a ball. I probably want to start the timer, the clock, when I drop that ball. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to find the frame I want to be the first frame. You might as well match it up with me clicking start on the iPad here. So that would be frame 7. This is where I want my clock to start. So I'm going to find that frame and I'm going to click Sync Movie to Graph. And it's going to give me 2 different times here, graph time and movie time. And what I want is when I'm at this movie time, my current spot, and that's what I put in here, I want the graph to make that my 0 time. So I'm going to change that to 0. I've already clicked this thing here, so make sure you've clicked that. And I'm going to click OK. So now it's going to treat this frame as my 0 time frame. A couple other things we need to do when measuring position. We need to define an origin point, a 0 point. So I'm going to click this third button down here, Set Origin. And I'm just going to make it the start of the meter stick because that just makes sense to me logically. All right. You'll notice it creates a coordinate system, an X coordinate, we would call this our horizontal coordinate, and a Y coordinate. We're just going to be looking at X because the buggy is not magically floating off the table. All right, the other thing Logger Pro needs to know is how big things are, because depending on how close or how far back I took this video from, all these objects could appear different sizes. So I need to give it a frame of reference. I need to give it a scale. So 4th button down, right under where we set the origin. And by the way, if you were like doing a ramp or something and you wanted to make your axis on the ramp, you could tilt this to match the ramp. And now I'm not gonna be able to get it back. Yeah, good enough. So I'm gonna click this 4th button down, set scale. And I need to have something in my video. So when you're making your video, make sure you have something that you know how big it is. In this case, I have these meter sticks, so that's pretty straightforward. I have 2 meter sticks taped together, so I know from one end to the other here. I can tell it, it's going to ask me once I'm done dragging, how long is that? And I can tell it that's 2 meters long. So now it has a scale to make measurements from. That's our setup. We now have our coordinate axis. The Logger Pro is going to define to the right here automatically as the positive direction. I could have rotated this around if I wanted a different direction to be positive. Now we're ready to add points. So I'm going to click the Add Point button. And I'm going to try to do the front of the car here. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to click at the front of the car. And you'll see it puts a dot. So we're basically making a motion diagram here. And each time I click, it advances the frame. So I'm just going to, follow along. I'm going kind of quickly here because, this isn't, the actual data I get here isn't relevant. And I'm going to go through the video and mark each frame. I'm going to pause for a second and fill that out. All right, I'm not going to do the whole thing. It's going to take me too long. And I'm not doing the lab, so I can get away with that. All right, so once I've gotten however much data I want to collect, maybe I don't do the whole video because maybe, it hits something or whatever. I'm going to click the select point here just to make sure I don't accidentally, if I click on here, I don't accidentally put a point somewhere completely random. And this is basically all I need from the video. You'll see behind the video, it's been collecting each of these points in a data table. And then it actually makes a graph here. It's making a graph of both the X and Y position at once, which is kind of silly. So we don't care about the Y position, we just care about the X. So I'm just gonna click that. And there we go, there's my position versus time graph. You'll see it probably looks a lot nicer than if you had manually taken this data, not going frame by frame. I got a lot of points. I can click them pretty precisely. I get a really nice line here. Now let's say I did want the velocity graph from this. Logger Pro has a feature where it can do that. It will find the slope for you at each point in time. This is called finding the tangent line, which we'll talk about more in the future. So I can just insert another graph. Just give me Y velocity. That's meaningless because it wasn't going up and down or anything. And I can choose, oops, not X, but X velocity. And that looks pretty chaotic because Logger Pro is kind of scaling this strangely. So I'm going to go to graph options. And there should be an option here somewhere. Oops, I should have remembered to look this up before I did the video. But I can see the issue here is it's not scaling it from 0. It goes straight from 0 to 0.4 instead of doing an even time interval. So what I can do is I can click here and I can tell it the bottom point I want to be 0. And let's just give me a little bit of a higher top point. All right, now that I've zoomed this graph out a little bit, we can see it is basically making this straight line across. And that would be the slope. You can see on my equation here, my slope 0.44 basically. Well, here this is basically a straight line. Again, it's real data, so it's a little funky. It's basically a straight line around 0.44. All right, so that's how to use the data analysis software here to get a position versus time graph, and then it very nicely changes it, can change it into a velocity versus time graph for you. My students tell me I should say, please like and subscribe. So yeah,